The frost cracked under his boots, each step a tiny breaking thing in the pre-dawn silence. The air was ablaze, sharp and clean, scented with old hay and the ghost of wood smoke. Inside the empty stable, the wind whistled a low tune through a gap in the boards, a sound that was less a noise and more a feeling of absence. What do you do when the only thing left of someone you loved is a horse they left behind? For Leo, the answer was a numb, daily pilgrimage. A duty, a sentence. The ranch was too quiet now. The house at the top of the drive, a monument he couldn't bring himself to enter properly. He lived in the periphery, in the barn, in the fields. Anywhere but the spaces that still held his brother's laugh in the dust motes dancing in the sun. And then there was the horse. It stood at the far end of the paddock, a silhouette cut from strange cloth. Even in the weak morning light, it was wrong. Beautiful, but wrong. Its body was all horse, a deep, dusty bay, but thrown across its shoulders and down its legs was a violent splash of pure white, striped with bold, shocking black. It was a jarring, painterly mistake. A zebra. Crossbred. A zorse, Eli had called it, his voice full of that wild, excited light he got when he talked about his conservation projects. A miracle of anti-poaching, a survivor. Now it was just a ghost of one of his brother's many causes. A living, breathing reminder. Leo leaned against the rough-hewn fence post, the cold wood biting through his jacket. He didn't call out. He just watched. The animal was a statue, its head high, its ears pricked forward, not at Leo, but at the distant tree line. It was always watching the trees, its breath plumed in the frigid air, a steady, anxious rhythm. Eli had loved it. Leo had only ever seen it from a distance. This bizarre creature his brother had rescued from some nightmare in the savannah, shipping it here to the Colorado quiet to heal. Now Eli was gone, a stupid flat road on a rainy night. And Leo, who preferred engines to animals, who understood the logic of a carburetor better than the heart of a horse, was all it had left. He'd been trying for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of entering the paddock, moving slow, talking in a low murmur about nothing. The weather, the faulty ignition on the truck, the price of feed. He never talked about Eli. The words would stick in his throat, a jagged lump of everything unsaid. The horse wanted nothing to do with him. It would tense, its striped muscles coiling, and pace the fence line with a high-headed, rolling-eyed panic that was pure, undiluted wild. It didn't see a caretaker. It saw a predator. Today, he climbed the fence and dropped into the paddock, a bucket of grain in his hand. The usual shift happened. The creature's head snapped toward him. Its body went rigid. A deep snort. A puff of vapor that was pure alarm. It took 2 stiff steps backward, ready to flee. Leo stopped. He didn't lift the bucket. He didn't take another step. He just stood there, his own breath catching in the cold, and felt the profound weight of his own failure. He was failing his brother. He was failing this terrified, beautiful thing. The grief was a physical pressure behind his eyes, a cold stone in his gut. "I know," he whispered, the words torn away by the wind. "I don't know what I'm doing either." He set the bucket down in the frost-bleached grass and took 3 slow steps back. He sat, right there on the cold, hard ground. He drew his knees up and wrapped his arms around them, making himself small, unthreatening. He looked at the ground, not at the animal, giving it the space to just be. Minutes bled into each other. The wind bit at his ears. He heard the soft crunch of hooves on frozen earth. Not the frantic pacing of before, but a single cautious step. Then another. He kept his head down, his heart hammering against his ribs. He could feel the animal's gaze on him, a tangible weight, a soft, blowing sound, a sniff. The air moved near his hair. He stayed perfectly still, his eyes fixed on a single blade of grass poking through the ice. He could smell it now, the warm grassy scent of its breath, the musk of its coat. He risked a glance up, moving only his eyes. The horse was right there. Its head was lowered, its nostrils flared, its dark liquid eye watching him with a depth of intelligence that was unnerving. The stripes on its face were like cracks in its composure, revealing the wildness beneath. It stretched its neck, its muzzle quivering, and it didn't sniff his hand. It sniffed the sleeve of his jacket, the old waxed canvas coat that had been Eli's. It breathed in deep, again and again, sorting through the scents. Oil, old coffee, cold earth, and something else, something buried under all the new smells. It hesitated, then pressed its soft, velvety muzzle hard against the fabric, inhaling as if it were trying to breathe the cloth itself. A low, almost inaudible rumble vibrated in its chest. Not a threat, Something else. Something like recognition. Something like loss. Leo didn't move. He didn't dare breathe. He watched this wild, heartbroken creature seek a ghost in the weave of his dead brother's coat. And for the first time since the police had come to his door, the stone in his gut didn't feel quite so cold, so alone. He sat until his legs went numb with cold. Finally, slowly, he uncurled himself and stood. The horse skittered back a step, but only one. Its ears were forward, its gaze fixed on him, no longer fearful but questioning. Leo turned to leave, to climb back over the fence and retreat to the silence of the house. He took one step, then another, the frost crunching. He didn't look back. But he listened, and he heard it. Not the sound of retreating hooves, but the soft, steady tread of one following. The following days were a fragile new language. Leo stopped bringing the bucket. He just came and he sat. The horse, whose name he'd learned was Kovu from the paperwork, would eventually amble over. Not for food, for the sleeve. It became their ritual. Kovu would approach, his striped head low and cautious, and he would bury his muzzle in the worn waxed canvas of Leo's left sleeve, breathing in as if reading a story only he could understand. Leo would talk then, his voice a low murmur against the chill. He talked about the carburetor he was rebuilding. He talked about the way the light hit the mountains in the evening. He never ever talked about Eli. That door was still locked tight, a room in his heart he dared not enter. But Kovu was beginning to react to things. Not spooks, not the normal horse fear of a plastic bag tumbling in the wind. This was different, deeper. A neighbor's truck backfired one afternoon, a sharp cracking sound that echoed across the valley. Leo flinched. But Kovu erupted. It wasn't a startled jump. It was a full-bodied, terror-fueled explosion. He screamed. A high, piercing sound that was nothing like a horse's whinny, a raw shriek of pure panic. He bolted, not just running, but crashing into the fence post, scrambling, his eyes showing wild whites, his body slick with a sudden terrified sweat. He was back there. Wherever there was. In the savannah, with the poachers, with the guns. And one evening, Leo was mending a section of fence, his tools laid out on a rag. He absent-mindedly whistled a tune, a half-remembered song from a road trip years ago. He heard a sharp intake of breath from Kovu. He turned. The horse was frozen, one foot held off the ground, his entire body tilted, listening. His ears were swiveled forward, locked onto Leo. There was no fear in his posture now, only a profound, aching intensity. Leo stopped whistling. Kovu took a single, hesitant step toward him, then let out a soft, questioning blow. It was a sound full of longing. The pieces were there, just beneath the surface, but Leo wouldn't pick them up. He couldn't. To pick them up was to acknowledge the picture they would form. He kept the grief at bay by focusing on the tasks. Mend the fence, check the water, clean the stall. He was a caretaker, a groundskeeper for a ghost. The breaking point came on a day that smelled of rain. A slow gray drizzle had begun to fall, and Leo decided to finally tackle the small storage room in the barn, a place he'd been avoiding since he'd arrived. It was a jumble of Eli's life, writing tack, conservation journals, boxes of who knows what. He was moving a heavy saddle when a small wooden box tucked on a high shelf caught his eye. It was simple, polished smooth by handling. He knew it. It was their grandfather's, a box for keeping fishing flies. Eli had claimed it after the funeral. His hands were trembling as he lifted it down. The lid was not locked. He opened it. Inside wasn't fishing tackle. It was Eli. A photograph of the two of them. Arms slung around each other's shoulders, sunburned and grinning after a hike. A dried wildflower, brittle and brown, and a letter folded neatly addressed to him. Leo. The world narrowed to the feel of the paper in his hands. It was covered in his brother's messy, sprawling handwriting. He sank onto an overturned bucket. The rain a soft drumbeat on the barn roof. Leo, if you're reading this, I probably tried to do something stupid in that old pickup and it finally backfired. Literally, don't be mad. Well, be a little mad, then get over it. I know the ranch isn't your thing. I know you'd rather be elbow deep in an engine than in horse feed. But I need to ask you a favor. It's a big one. His name is Kovu. He's a Zorse. I know, it sounds like a bad comic book character. But he's real. He saw his whole herd wiped out by poachers. He was just a foal. He survived because his mother, well, she didn't. He was shot too, the scar on his flank. He's seen the worst of us. I brought him here because the silence here, and it's the kind that can heal. He's terrified. Of men, of loud noises, of everything. But he's also the bravest creature I've ever met. He has a heart that just keeps trying to trust even when it has every reason not to. I'm trusting you with him, Leo. Not to just keep him alive, but to show him that the world isn't all bad, that there are hands that don't hold weapons, that there are people who are quiet and steady and kind, people like you. I whistled that stupid road trip song to him when he was scared on the transport plane. It seemed to calm him down. Maybe he just has bad taste in music like his owner. Take care of him for me, and let him take care of you. I think you both might need it, Love Eli. The words blurred. A sob tore out of Leo. A raw, broken sound he didn't recognize as his own. It was a dam breaking. All of it. The guilt of not calling enough. The anger at the stupid, pointless accident. The bottomless, howling void of missing his brother came flooding out. He crumpled over, the letter pressed to his chest, his shoulders shaking with the force of a grief he had refused to feel for weeks. He cried for Eli. He cried for the boy in the photograph. He cried for the terrifying responsibility in his hands. He didn't know how long he sat there, lost in the storm. But gradually, through the haze of his tears, he became aware of a presence. A soft, warm breath on the back of his neck. The gentle, rhythmic sound of chewing. He slowly straightened up, wiping his face with a rough hand. Kovu was there. He had pushed the stall door open and stood in the doorway of the storage room, his head lowered. He wasn't nosing for food. He wasn't scared by the noise. He was just there. His dark, deep eyes were soft, watching Leo. He took a single step forward and rested his heavy, warm head against Leo's chest, right over the aching, empty space where the letter lay. He stood there, solid and unmoving, a living, breathing anchor in the storm. He held Leo up. He stayed until the shaking stopped, until the tears were spent, until the only sound was the gentle rain and their two hearts, beating in the quiet barn. Weeks later, the first real snow fell, blanketing the ranch in a deep, forgiving silence. Leo was in the paddock, not sitting but standing beside Kovu. The horse's head was up, but he wasn't watching the trees. He was watching the falling snow, his ears twitching at the soft hush it made. Leo rested a hand on the warm, solid muscle of Kovu's neck, his fingers tracing the edge of a bold black stripe. He wasn't a groundskeeper anymore. He was a caretaker, and he was being cared for. On a morning so bright the snow glittered like a million diamonds, Leo led Kovu out of the paddock for the first time. Not with a rope, but with a quiet word and a touch. They walked together up the gentle slope toward the house Leo had been afraid to enter. Kovu stopped at the front porch, nudging at a weathered wooden post with his nose. Curious. And there, tucked into a gap in the wood, almost hidden, was something. A small metallic glint. Leo reached for it. It was a whistle. A simple, old-fashioned dog whistle on a frayed leather cord. The kind you'd use to call something home from a great distance. He understood. This was the whistle for the song. The road trip song. The one that meant safety. The one that meant I am here, you are not alone. He looked at Kovu. The horse looked back, calm, steady, his breath pluming in the cold air. He had led Leo here. He had been waiting for him to be ready to find it. Leo brought the whistle to his lips. He didn't blow it, not yet. He just held it, the cold metal warming in his hand. He looked out over the white blanketed fields, the silent, majestic mountains, and he felt it. Not the absence of grief, but the presence of something else. Something growing alongside it. A quiet kind of peace. Sometimes the ones who carry you through the darkest nights are the ones who themselves have learned how to walk in the dark. If this story found a place in your heart, if you felt that quiet shift from loss to hope, then you know why we tell them. There are more souls out there, human and animal, waiting for their stories to be heard. Subscribe and press the bell icon. Be here tomorrow for the next story that just might change yours. Leave a comment below, tell us what you felt. Share this with someone who needs to remember that even in the deepest winter, a thaw is always possible. Thank you for listening.